Have you noticed how some people seem to naturally attract love, respect, and opportunities? While many of us struggle to be valued, there are those who never need to beg for attention. It simply comes to them. What do they have that we don't? The answer may be hidden in the teachings of psychoanalyst Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human psyche. Jung discovered something extraordinary. When you truly value yourself, the universe responds. It's like a cosmic law that few understand. And today, I'll share with you this transformative secret that has the power to completely change your relational life, your connection with the universe, and most importantly, your relationship with yourself. Imagine there's a switch inside you that, when activated, makes those people who never valued you suddenly begin to see you differently. That partner who always put you second, that boss who never recognized your worth, those friendships where you always give more than you receive, all begin to change their behavior toward you. It seems like magic, but Jung would explain this as a profound principle of human psychology and universal dynamics. It's not about manipulation. It's about inner transformation that reflects in the outer world. Are you ready to discover what Jung really meant when he said that self-love absolutely changes everything? Get ready, because after this video, your way of viewing your relationships will never be the same. Have you ever wondered why you continue to attract people who don't value you? Why there seems to be a pattern where you always end up choosing those who don't choose you back? If you've felt the deep pain of not being someone's priority, of giving your all in a relationship only to receive emotional crumbs in return, know that you're not alone. It's a painfully common experience, but we rarely talk about the true roots of this pattern. The truth is that there's a vicious cycle many of us live through. The less we're valued, the more we try to prove our worth. It's as if we're in a never-ending race seeking external validation, trying to win someone's love, as if love were something we need to deserve or earn. You try harder, nullify yourself more, tolerate more disrespect, all in the hope that eventually the other person will see your value and change. And then, when that doesn't happen, the pain is overwhelming. The feeling of rejection, of emotional invisibility, the constant anxiety of abandonment. These are wounds that deepen with each new disappointment. The worst part is that often, even when we finally gather the courage to leave such a relationship, we end up attracting another person who reproduces exactly the same pattern, just with a different face. Jung would call this shadow projection. He would say, it's no coincidence that we keep encountering the same toxic dynamics in different relationships. It's because we're projecting onto the outer world something that's happening within us. Our relationship with others is a perfect mirror of the relationship we have with ourselves. If internally we don't value ourselves, the universe merely reflects that reality back to us. Have you ever stopped to think that perhaps the most important relationship you need to heal isn't with another person, but with yourself? What Jung discovered, which revolutionized the understanding of modern psychology, is that our outer world is a direct manifestation of our inner world. When you change how you relate to yourself, the entire universe around you begins to respond differently. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you never again needed to beg for love or attention. If you knew with absolute certainty that you deserve to be treated with respect and admiration. If you had the ability to establish clear boundaries without fear of losing people. If you could finally break this cycle of unbalanced relationships where you always give more than you receive, it's possible. And it's not just possible, it's your birthright. Jung deeply believed that each of us possesses a self, an internal core of wholeness and completeness. The problem is that many of us have lost connection with this center during our life journey. Traumas, social conditioning, experiences of rejection. All these things make us believe we're not enough, that we need to win someone's love to be complete. This is the great deception that keeps so many people trapped in cycles of emotional suffering. Jung would say you are already complete. You don't need to win love. You need to reconnect with your own wholeness, your own inherent worth. And when this reconnection happens, something magical begins to manifest in your external life. It's as if the universe conspires in your favor. In the next few minutes, I'll guide you through Jung's most profound teachings on how to reestablish this sacred connection with yourself and, consequently, transform all your relationships. I'll share practical techniques based on Jungian psychology that you can apply today to begin this transformation. I'm not talking about superficial solutions or empty positive affirmations. I'm talking about a deep work of internal alchemy that has the power to fundamentally change how the world responds to you. You'll discover how to identify the unconscious patterns that are sabotaging your relationships, how to confront your personal shadow, how to activate your internal resources to establish healthy boundaries, and how to finally create a natural magnetism that attracts people who recognize and honor your worth. And most importantly, you'll learn to recognize the signs that the universe is beginning to respond to your new vibrational pattern. Are you ready for this journey? Then let's begin with the first Jungian principle that will completely change your view of your relationships, the mirror principle, or how the universe reflects your internal worth. According to Jung, everything we experience externally is a direct reflection of our internal state. This is why people with low self-esteem frequently attract relationships where they're devalued. It's not coincidence or bad luck. It's a manifestation of what Jung would call psychic correspondence. When you internally believe you don't deserve full love or respect, the universe simply honors that belief, presenting you with people and situations that confirm what you already believe about yourself. The first step to change this pattern is to recognize how the shadow, that repressed part of ourselves that Jung identified as crucial for our development, is operating in your relationships. Carefully observe the people you feel inexplicably attracted to, especially those who end up hurting you. What do they have in common? What aspects of them awaken both your admiration and your suffering? Jung discovered that we're magnetically attracted to people who carry unintegrated aspects of our own psyche. That emotionally unavailable person who fascinates you so much may be reflecting your own difficulty in being emotionally available to yourself. That partner who never prioritizes your needs may be mirroring how you yourself put your needs last. This is a profound revelation. Your relationships aren't happening to you, they're happening from you. The next step is to identify your emotional price, that minimum value you unconsciously established for yourself. Jung talked about how each person carries an internal sense of deservingness, a kind of emotional thermostat that determines what we allow in our life. Ask yourself this powerful question. What have you been tolerating in your relationships that, deep down, you know you don't deserve? Perhaps it's the way someone speaks to you, or how your needs are consistently ignored, or how you're treated as an option while you treat the other person as a priority. Each time you accept less than you deserve, you're communicating to the universe and to your unconscious that this is your worth. And the universe will always give you exactly what you believe you deserve. No more, no less. The Jungian law of correspondence goes further. It suggests that we not only attract what we are, but that our relationships are direct projections of the relationship we have with ourselves. If you constantly criticize yourself, you'll attract critical people. If you don't trust yourself, you'll attract people you cannot trust. If you don't prioritize yourself, you'll attract people who don't prioritize you. When you truly understand this principle, something extraordinary happens. You stop blaming others for how they treat you and take responsibility for your reality. This doesn't mean blaming yourself. It means recognizing your power. If you created this reality unconsciously, you can also recreate it consciously. The benefits of applying this first Jungian principle are immense. First, you gain surprising clarity about your relational patterns. What before seemed like a painful mystery, why does this always happen to me, now reveals itself as an understandable pattern that you can transform. Second, you free yourself from guilt and victimization. Finally, you develop the ability to see the true dynamics of relationships, seeing beyond appearances to understand the psychic forces at play. This leads us to the second fundamental principle: individuation, or the process of becoming your own priority. Jung considered individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, as the central purpose of human life. In the context of relationships, this means learning to become complete in yourself before seeking completeness in another person. The first step in this process is to confront what Jung would call the abandonment complex. These are deeply rooted, emotional patterns that usually formed in childhood and continue to influence your adult relationships. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where your worth was conditioned on your performance. Or perhaps you learned that to receive love, you always needed to please others, even at the expense of your own needs. These complexes create primary wounds that, if not healed, will continue to determine your relational patterns throughout your life. The Jungian technique for identifying these wounds involves paying attention to your disproportional emotional reactions. When you feel an overwhelming fear of rejection, a paralyzing anxiety of abandonment, or an intense anger that seems greater than the situation warrants, you're facing an active complex. It's as if a childlike part of you takes control in these moments. Jung would say this wounded inner child needs to be recognized, heard, and integrated, not suppressed or denied. When you begin to consciously converse with these wounded aspects of yourself, offering the understanding and validation that you may never have received, a profound internal healing begins to occur. The next step is to establish what I call the self-affirmation ritual, a daily practice to strengthen your connection with the self, that center of wisdom and completeness that Jung identified as our true nature. This isn't just about reciting positive affirmations. It's a profound dialogue with your essence. Each morning, reserve a moment to connect with your inherent worth, not based on achievements or others' approval, but simply for existing. Ask yourself, if I truly loved myself today, how would I treat myself? What choices would I make? What boundaries would I establish? Then, commit to acting from that place of self-dignity. It's a process of reconnecting with that part of you that remains intact, no matter what has happened in your life. As you strengthen this internal connection, you naturally begin to rewrite what I call the relational contract, those unspoken rules that determine how you allow yourself to be treated. Jung observed that we carry internal relationship models, usually based on our first experiences of connection. If we learn that love means excessive sacrifice or that we need to earn affection, these models will continue to operate until they are consciously transformed. Begin to establish new interaction patterns based on equality and mutual respect. This might mean having difficult conversations where you clearly express your needs. It might mean saying no when before you would have said yes for fear of displeasing. It might mean stepping away from relationships that continually drain your energy without reciprocity. A crucial aspect of this process is integrating what Jung called anima and animus, the feminine and masculine aspects present in each person, regardless of gender. When these aspects are imbalanced, we desperately seek in the outer world what we lack internally. A woman balanced in her feminine polarity doesn't desperately seek a strong man to protect her. She cultivates her own inner strength, her own capacity to establish boundaries and protect her sacred space. A man balanced in his masculine polarity doesn't constantly seek feminine validation. He finds his own foundation of self-certainty and self-validation. When you begin to nurture these complementary aspects within yourself, something extraordinary happens. You stop looking for in others what you can cultivate in yourself. The desperate need for relationships diminishes, replaced by a healthy desire for connection from a place of completeness, not lack. The benefits of this individuation process are transformative. First, you develop an emotional independence that frees you from the constant need for external approval. Second, you gain unprecedented clarity of purpose, knowing exactly who you are and what you want in your relationships. Finally, you transcend the need for external validation that previously drove your relational choices. And this leads us to the third Jungian principle, emotional alchemy, or how to transform anxious attachment into personal power. Jung was fascinated by medieval alchemy, seeing in it a perfect metaphor for the process of psychic transformation. Just as alchemists sought to transform common metals into gold, Jung believed we could transform our basic emotions into wisdom. The first step in this process is to work with what I call the shadow of attachment, those hidden aspects of anxious attachment that we rarely recognize. Behind phrases like "I miss you" or "I worry about you" often hides a deep fear of abandonment, a fundamental insecurity about our own worth, or a belief that we need to constantly monitor the relationship to keep it safe. Jung would teach us to look honestly at these hidden motivations. When you desperately cling to someone, what are you really seeking? Security? Validation? A sense of completeness that you believe you cannot find in yourself? By bringing these motives to consciousness, you begin to dismantle the power they have over your behavior. The next step is what Jung would call the transmutation of suffering. Instead of seeing emotional pain as something to be avoided at all costs, Jung suggested that it contains seeds of profound wisdom. That painful rejection, that devastating breakup, that betrayal that broke your heart, all contain precise lessons about what you really need in a relationship, about your own blind spots, and about your fundamental values. The Jungian practice for converting pain into wisdom involves a conscious dialogue with suffering. Instead of running from pain or drowning it in distractions, take a moment to really feel it and ask, what is this pain teaching me? What part of me needs to be seen and healed? What truth is this experience revealing that I didn't want to see before? This practice completely transforms your relationship with painful experiences. Instead of being a victim of suffering, you become its student. Each relational disappointment becomes not a sign of your failure, but a necessary step in your personal evolution. The third step in this alchemy is to activate what Jung would call the archetype of the inner warrior. That part of you that fiercely defends your worth and dignity. This is not a warrior who attacks others, but an internal guardian who establishes and maintains healthy boundaries. It's the voice within you that says, no, this is not acceptable to me, or, yes, I deserve more than this. To awaken this archetype, begin practicing small acts of self-dignity daily. Perhaps it's expressing an opinion you would normally suppress, or directly asking for what you need instead of waiting for others to guess, or stepping away from situations that diminish your sense of worth. As this archetype strengthens, you naturally begin to release relationships that don't honor who you are. It's not that you actively expel them from your life. It's that they simply no longer find space in your new energetic reality. As Jung would say, what doesn't serve your growth eventually falls away on its own. The benefits of this emotional alchemy are profound. You experience a natural release from toxic relationships, not through dramatic struggles, but through a natural elevation of your energetic field. You develop an unshakable ability to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. And perhaps most importantly, you cultivate an emotional resilience that allows you to navigate relational highs and lows without losing your center. This leads us to the fourth Jungian principle, synchronicity, or when the universe conspires in your favor. Jung defined synchronicity as meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by conventional causality. He observed that when we align with our authentic self, the external world begins to present remarkable coincidences that seem to support our journey. The first step to working with synchronicity is learning to recognize synchronistic signs. When you begin to genuinely honor your worth, the universe responds, often in surprising ways. Perhaps it's a casual encounter with someone who reflects your new level of self-esteem, or an unexpected opportunity that arises precisely when you decided to no longer settle for less than you deserve, or a challenging situation that mysteriously resolves itself when you finally decide to prioritize your well-being. These aren't random events. Jung would say they are direct responses from the universe to your new vibrational pattern. They are confirmations that you're on the right path, cosmic signals encouraging you to continue honoring your worth. The next step is to establish what I call dialogue with the collective unconscious, that dimension of the psyche that Jung identified as transcending our individuality and connecting us to a universal wisdom. This dialogue happens through dreams, intuitions, and synchronicities that seem to guide your path when you're genuinely open to receiving guidance. The Jungian practice for strengthening this dialogue involves paying conscious attention to the patterns emerging in your life. Ask yourself questions like, what theme seems to be repeating in my recent experiences? What message does the universe seem to be trying to communicate to me? Where is my intuition guiding me? As you honor these subtle directions, what Jung would call Jungian manifestation occurs, a process where your conscious choices, aligned with your authentic self, literally create new realities. This doesn't happen through superficial manifestation techniques, but through a deep internal realignment that naturally attracts corresponding external circumstances. If internally you truly believe in your worth, the universe conspires to bring people and situations that reflect this belief. Not because you're trying to manipulate reality, but because you're finally allowing the true reality to manifest, one where you are naturally worthy of love, respect, and abundance. The benefits of working with synchronicity are extraordinary. You begin to experience a sensation of natural flow in life, where the right doors open without excessive effort. You notice a significant increase in positive synchronistic experiences, those magical moments where everything seems to align perfectly, and perhaps most significantly, you develop a deep sensation of aligned purpose, knowing you're on the right path not because someone told you so, but because the universe itself is confirming your choices. And this leads us to the fifth and final principle: magnetic inversion, or when you become the natural center of attraction. Jung observed a fascinating phenomenon in his patients. Those who finally stopped desperately pursuing certain experiences often naturally attracted them. It's what we modernly call the paradox of detachment, but which Jung understood as a manifestation of internal completeness. The first step in this process is to practice what I call active detachment. Not indifference, but a conscious release of the need to control specific outcomes in your relationships. Jung would say that our attempt to control or force outcomes comes from a place of fear, not power. Practice daily releasing control over how others should treat you, how your relationships should evolve, or even whether someone specific should remain in your life. This is not an exercise in passivity. It's an act of deep trust in your own worth and in the natural flow of life. Ask yourself, if I knew with absolute certainty that I am complete and worthy, regardless of how this person or situation unfolds, how would I act now? And then, act from that place of internal certainty, not desperate need. The next step is to cultivate what Jung would call authentic presence, that state of being where you are completely present and non-fragmented, fully in touch with your true self. This internal integration naturally creates a magnetic field around you that attracts people who resonate with your authentic frequency. The Jungian practice for developing authentic presence involves first identifying where you're not being truthful in your relationships. Where do you wear masks? Where do you repress your true emotions? Where do you say yes when you really want to say no? These small acts of self-betrayal weaken your presence and diminish your natural magnetism. Begin to practice compassionate honesty in all your relationships. It's not about being cruel or insensitive, it's about honoring the truth of your experience. When you allow yourself to be seen completely, without masks or pretensions, something extraordinary happens. You become magnetic. Not that superficial magnetism based on appearances or achievements, but a deep magnetism that comes from personal integration. The third aspect of this principle is what Jung would describe as the law of amplified return, the phenomenon where, when you genuinely value yourself, you often receive more than you expected or believed you deserved. It's as if the universe not only matches your self-evaluation, but exceeds it. Many people experience this as a delightful surprise. I finally decided that I deserved at least basic respect in my relationships, and suddenly I found someone who treats me like a treasure. Or, when I stopped settling for emotional crumbs, I began to attract generous and available people. Jung would explain that this happens because our conscious mind often underestimates our true worth. When we finally allow ourselves to receive, according to our real value, not that determined by wounds or conditioning, the natural abundance of life can flow without obstacles. The benefits of this final principle are deeply transformative. First, you begin to naturally attract healthy relationships without the exhausting effort you previously employed. People who honor your worth begin to appear as if magnetically drawn to your orbit. Second, you experience the end of emotional pursuit, that exhausting pattern of always chasing validation or attention. Instead, you become naturally attractive simply by being who you are, without effort or manipulation. And finally, you develop a lasting sensation of internal completeness that transcends any external circumstances. You cease to be a person who desperately needs relationships to feel whole and become someone who chooses relationships from a place of internal abundance. Now, bringing together all these Jungian principles, we can see how self-love really changes everything. It's not just an inspirational affirmation, it's a profound psychological truth with tangible effects on your reality. When you truly internalize that your worth doesn't depend on external validation, that you are inherently worthy of love and respect, and that the universe naturally reflects your internal state, you literally reconfigure the energetic field of your relationships. People who previously devalued you begin to treat you differently, not because you manipulated them to change, but because you changed the vibrational pattern they're responding to. Some of these people will naturally align with your new frequency. Others will naturally distance themselves because they no longer resonate with who you've become. Both outcomes are perfect. The relationships that remain in your life will be transformed. The power imbalance that previously characterized your interactions will be naturally corrected. The toxic dynamics that before seemed inevitable will simply no longer find fertile ground in your renewed energetic field. And perhaps most magical, new relationships will begin to enter your life. People who naturally recognize and honor your worth because they're operating at a similar frequency of self-dignity. These connections will have a completely different quality from previous ones. Easier, more balanced, more nourishing. I'm not talking about a process that takes decades to manifest. When you truly begin to practice these Jungian principles, the first signs of change can appear almost immediately. Perhaps it's an internal sensation of peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. Or perhaps it's the sudden courage to establish a boundary you never dared before. Or perhaps it's noticing subtle synchronicities that seem to confirm you're on the right path. As you continue on this journey, the transformations become increasingly profound and visible. Within a few weeks or months, you may be surprised to realize how fundamentally you've changed your relationship, not just with others, but with yourself. That critical internal voice that used to dominate your thoughts grows quieter, replaced by a voice of wisdom and self-dignity. That chronic feeling of not being enough begins to dissolve, replaced by a calm certainty of your inherent worth. And let's be honest, this process isn't always easy or comfortable. Jung never promised a journey without challenges. There will be moments of internal resistance, parts of you that are comfortable in the old patterns and fear change. There will be moments of confusion when your internal and external realities seem to be in conflict during this transition. And there will be moments of pain when you finally face old wounds you've been avoiding for so long. But Jung would assure us that this pain is a necessary part of growth. It's what he would call sacred discomfort, that temporary discomfort that precedes significant expansion, and he would assure us that, on the other side of this crossing, is a freedom and peace that previously seemed impossible. As Jung so powerfully said, your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. This is your moment. The decision you make now, to continue in the same patterns that aren't serving you, or to embark on this journey of self-discovery and transformation, will determine not only the quality of your future relationships, but the quality of your relationship with yourself for the rest of your life. So, what do you choose? To continue waiting for others to change, to finally value you and choose you, or to make the most powerful choice possible, to choose yourself, honor your own worth, and allow the universe to respond to this internal change? Jung believed that within each of us exists an unlimited potential for growth and transformation. He saw firsthand how ordinary people, facing relational challenges similar to yours, were able to completely recalibrate their lives by reconnecting with their intrinsic worth. Begin today. Don't wait until you feel ready. You will never feel completely ready for a profound transformation. Begin with a small act of self-dignity. Perhaps it's establishing a boundary you've been avoiding. Perhaps it's giving yourself permission to feel an emotion you've been suppressing. Perhaps it's simply looking in the mirror and recognizing your inherent worth, independent of any external validation. This first step, however small it may seem, is powerful. It's like dropping a stone in a lake. The concentric circles of transformation will continue expanding far beyond what you can imagine now. And as Jung reminded us, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Choose to become someone who values themselves deeply, and observe how the universe begins to obey this new inner truth, not as an act of magic, but as a natural manifestation of the most fundamental psychic law that Jung discovered. That which we honor within us is inevitably reflected back to us in the outer world. This is your journey. This is your moment. And it all begins with a single choice. The choice to finally, fully, without reservations, choose yourself. As you begin this journey of self-discovery, remember that Jung saw the process of individuation as a lifelong path. The most important thing, he said, is that you don't isolate yourself, that you have the courage of your feelings. This means honoring your internal experience even when it contradicts what others expect of you. It means listening to that wise voice inside you that has always known your true worth, even when the world tried to convince you otherwise. The true revolution occurs not when you change the world, but when you change the way you see yourself. It's what Jung would call internal perspective shift, that literally reconfigures your entire external experience. When you stop seeing yourself through the lenses of unlove, lack, or insufficiency, and begin to recognize your inherent completeness, the world has no choice but to reflect this new truth back to you. Many people spend their entire lives looking outside for what can only be found within. They search in relationships, achievements, or possessions for that sense of worth and completeness that, as Jung discovered, already exists within them. It's like looking for glasses that are already on your face. The answer has always been so close that you couldn't see it. If at this moment you're feeling an internal resistance to this idea, if a part of you doubts that simply valuing yourself can really transform your relationships, know that this is a natural response. Jung would call this ego resistance, that part of us that clings to familiar narratives, even when they cause us suffering. It's as if a part of us prefers known suffering to unknown freedom. But as Jung would remind us, it's not how much you do, but how much love you put into the action that matters. This work of reconnecting with your worth doesn't need to be complicated or time-consuming. It doesn't require elaborate techniques or years of therapy, although therapy can certainly be a valuable support on this journey. It requires only your willingness to question limiting beliefs about your worth and to make daily choices that honor who you truly are. Begin right now with this simple yet profound exercise that Jung would recommend. Spend the next 7 days consciously observing how you treat yourself. Observe your internal language, how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake or face a challenge. Observe your choices, where you compromise your values or needs to please others. Observe your relationships, where you tolerate less than you deserve for fear of being alone. Simply observing these patterns, without judgment, but with compassionate curiosity, is the first step to transforming them. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.